People have hobbies, and if the hobby requires some sort of consumable resource, there's a pretty big chance they soon start hoarding it at some point in their life. People who like modeling hoard model kits and extra parts. People who knit or sew hoard the yarns and threads. Well, and people who like gardening I might have a problem. Seeds can survive some really harsh conditions. Just think of the veggie seeds you buy in your local store. They dry them and store them in a paper bag or plastic container for months. And yet, when you put them in fresh soil and give them some water and warmth, they start to sprout. Some seeds even require the harshest conditions to germinate in the first place, like seeds of some pine trees that literally need to catch on fire for the pine cone to open. Other seeds require to go through a certain period of very low temperatures, poppies for example. But everything's got some limits. And even the most badass seeds will eventually run out of stored energy if left in their standby mode for too long. Okay, so as I have said, I might have a problem. I do have a problem with seeds. Let's say there's been a longer pause. For the last 2 years, I didn't really have time during the really important part of the season, which is obviously late winter and early spring. So even though keeping a veggie patch doesn't require much of your time in the long run, you need to do some work in a certain time of the year. And so it was that in that particular time of the year, for the last 2 years, I had no spare time. So I always planned for the last 2 years, or even 3 probably, since as I'm looking at the packages, there's year 2019. So I always thought I would be preparing for a veggie garden that year. So I bought a bunch of seeds, and then I didn't have time, so I shelved them, and then obviously I forgot about them. So the next year I did the very same thing. I bought a bunch of seeds, then I realized I don't have the time and I shelved them. And in 2 or 3 years, this is just a portion of the whole thing, this is like half of it, so this is the result. So I might have a problem with hoarding seeds. Now logically, the seeds packaging has always this date printed, and it's the equivalent of best before. Basically what it tells you, as I've mentioned in the intro, even the most badass seed will eventually run out of its stored energy if you let it sit for too long. And that date basically tells you how long is it safe to wait before you plant the seeds. So for example, these onions were packed during September 2017, and they were to expire by December 19. So people who produce these seeds know that, for example, for onions, it takes about 2 years before the seeds slowly start to die off. And what happens, it's not like after 2 years none of the seeds will germinate and turn into sprouting plants. What happens is that with a new pack of seeds, if you plant them, like 90 or 95, 99% of those seeds will eventually sprout out. But after 2 years, the percentage of the seeds that germinate begins to decrease. And after a certain time, the percentage is so low that only about half of the seeds germinate. And if you were to plant it directly into the seed bed, then you would end up with mostly empty veggie patch. So that's not something you want to do and not something you want to have. So what I've done is I went through all the packages and put aside those which are still before the expiration date, which means they should be completely fine. And these are seeds which are beyond the expiration date. And what I'm about to do is do a so-called germination test, which means I take, for example, 5 or 10 seeds from each package, and I'll try to sprout them, to germinate them on a wet paper towel to see if they are still usable. Now the percentage I'm looking for is at least 50%. So let's say if I do the test with 5 seeds from each package, then I'll be happy with 2 or 3 seeds that germinate, and basically I will use the seeds this season. And if it doesn't germinate at all, or if there's just 1 out of 5 seeds germinates, then this is all probably trash. So yeah, let's do it. So there we go. For the test, we have a tray, we have the paper towel, spray container filled with water, seeds, and some paper for labels so that we know which seeds are which. I'm gonna lay the paper towels in 2 layers. Here a pair of tweezers might come in handy. So let's take 5 seeds. Let's place them on the tray. Now let's make a label. Tomatoes, and then I'm gonna cover the seeds with another layer of towel. So let's skip forward, and I'll be back when I'm done with all the seeds I have in here, and they should be on a tray. And some 20 minutes later, there we go. So we have tomatoes, Stuttgart onion, spring onion, red onion, beetroot, then the red thingy, I don't know how it's called, or I cannot remember, white pepper, and spinach. Now, you might have noticed that somewhere I'm testing only 5 seeds, and somewhere I test 10, or here 13, here even 16. Well, those where I took only 5 seeds are mostly empty packages. So I was like, let's not use it all up just for the purpose of testing. And so with those which I only have a few I used 5. Otherwise, I doubled it to 10, with notable exceptions of red onion, where I just went overboard and instead of 10, sprinkled out too many seeds. So I was like, hey, what if I ain't giving them back? And the same goes for beetroot and the red thingy. So it's not like laughing lab consistency in the face, it's just that I'm a messy person. So now I will just leave the seeds to do their thing. I placed the tray somewhere warm, so probably on a windowsill or just here on the table in the kitchen. And now we'll just have to wait for the results. So stay tuned, keep DIY, and live out the Frontier way.